What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Remix Cup submitted to the channel by the Butte Prince, who's running a triple buffed Shadow team with Metang, Gyarados, and Aerodactyl. Metang is a great core breaker for a lot of teams in the meta, and Gyarados and Aerodactyl help to cover its weaknesses to fire and ground. Aerodactyl is a Pokemon that hasn't really seen any play in the Go Battle League since the Flying Cup, a meta where it was the meta-defining Pokemon, but maybe this Pokemon's actually a bit better than we give it credit for. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Can you think of any other Pokemon that have previously dominated a specific limited cup but have since seen zero play in any other GBL metas? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shadow Metang into Zweiler. So this is actually a fairly decent matchup for us, as our Fury Cutters are hitting for super effective damage. We're going to bait with a side shot, but the opponent actually catches onto a Jellicent, and that is fine with us. We definitely would prefer that rather than having them no-shield it into the Zweiler. Now we're going to come in with the Gyarados, going straight for Crunch, grabbing a shield advantage. And at this point, we are actually going to no-shield the Gyarados. The opponent baits with a Surf there, forcing them to throw another charge move straight away. And at this point, we're still not shielding. Surf gets the KO, but we've put them into range where Aerodactyl can come in and commit to a full Rock Throw farm down. The opponent not even going to reach a Surf there. We get the full farm down. The opponent comes back in with his Wireless, and of course, they will be reaching a charge move. They are going to bait with a Body Slam, but we're already at the Rock Side. We're firing it off straight away. Rock Side, gonna be no-shielded. The opponent has a Crustle in the back. There is literally nothing they can do there. The opponent allows the full Rock Throw farm down, and we're able to take that game. Heading into the next battle, we can see Shadow Metang into Diggersby. So this is a bit of a tricky lead matchup for us, but we can stay in at least initially here, as we are resisting the quick attack damage. Gonna go for a side shot kit, and then probably gonna look to try and catch onto Gyarados. Doesn't work out for us. The opponent actually then makes a very nice catch there, catching a resisted Aquatail onto Araquanid. Of course, Araquanid is going to resist the water type damage, but we can go for a Crunch. However, Araquanid is a lot bulkier than Shadow Gyarados. It tanks that very comfortably. And despite the fact that it can only hit for resisted damage, Auto Pulse puts us into Bug Bite farm down range. At this point, we come in with either Pokemon. I believe we're going to come in with the Metang here, as of course we are taking neutral damage from the fast moves, and that Diggersby does have a lot of energy, so we're going to go straight for Side Shock. Side Shock gets the KO. They come back in with the Diggersby. We should actually tank even a Scorching Sands here, and we do, and we can even reach a Side Shock before they fully farm us down. Side Shock, gonna get them very low. They swap, but they swap into Fearow, and once again, Shadow Aerodactyl absolutely destroying their final Pokemon. We can just safely shield. We do actually resist both charge moves. However, Aerodactyl is very glassy. We can just shield this as well, just to play it safe here. The opponent goes for Scorching Sands. One more Rock Throw, gets the farm down, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Jellicent in the lead. So a little bit tricky for the Metang. We're going to say swap into Gyarados, and the opponent is this time going to catch, but they catch onto a Tentacruel, and they end up shielding anyways, so that's fine with us. We can actually go for a second Crunch here. Crunch number 2. Not going to do too much damage here, but they double shield the Tentacruel. That is a very interesting play. All right, so at this point, Scald gonna not get the KO there, but they do farm us down. We can come back in with the Metang. No, never mind. We're actually going to get ahead on energy with our Shadow Aerodactyl. So of course, definitely going to shield the School this time around here, and we are going to look to overfarm. Unfortunately, not able to commit to a full farm down there. Forced to throw on CMP, but Rockside gets the KO there, and let's see what we want to do here. The opponent's going to come back in with a Jellicent, and they do already have enough energy for a Surf. We're going to shield this up here and potentially look to try and catch the next charge move onto our Shadow Metang. So Surf is not going to do too much damage there. The opponent is going to stay in initially, then swapping out, catching onto Crustle. Very nice catch once again. However, what this does is it sets up a perfect farm for Shadow Aerodactyl. We've already seen Aerodactyl farming down a Crustle. They go for X-Scissor. That's fine with us. We get the full farm down. We come out with the Rock Slide loaded, and Rock Slide, since it does more damage this season, will be enough to take out the Jellicent, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Shadow Metang into a Carbink. A really good lead matchup for us. Of course, they are going to resist the Fury Cutter damage. However, of course, Gyro Ball going to hit for double super effective. They're going to say swap into Ferret. We don't really have a great response. So going to chip with a Side Shock. Then looking to maybe catch a Swift onto our Aerodactyl. We're going to shield here. They do go for the Trailblaze, though. They're boosting up the Sucker Punch damage, and we are going to have to double shield here if we want to maintain alignment. However, if we commit to a full Rock Throw farm down, which we are going to do, we come out with an Iron Head loaded. An Iron Head, obviously non-stat, but it is double super effective. It does huge damage to the Carbink there. However, we are down a shield. The opponent comes in with their own Metang. We're going to stay in here. We're going to bait with a Psyshock. I don't agree with this at all. Psyshock is double resisted. It really doesn't do much damage. We swap out there trying to catch a Charge Brief onto our Gyarados, but it doesn't really matter. The opponent goes for a Psyshock. Psyshock does get us fairly low. They will need to throw another Charge Brief to take us out, however. So we go for an Aquatail. Aquatail is going to be shielded. The opponent swaps back into Carbink, but they catch an Aquatail. So Aquatail is actually going to KO the Carbink, and they don't commit to a full farm down. They actually probably could have done there, but they go for Psyshock. Psyshock gets the KO, and now it's all down to our Metang. Of course, all shields are down. Gyro Ball is resisted, however, and we can throw our own Gyro Ball. Does this KO? Gyro Ball does get the knockout up against the opposing Metang, and we're able to take that game. Into next battle, going to see a Shadow Golurk in the lead. Of course, not a great matchup. Going to be safe swapping into Gyarados, and unfortunately met with a Carbink. But we do have Aquatail for coverage here. If we can reach 3 Aquatails, we should be able to grab a shield advantage in this matchup. However, it doesn't look likely, unfortunately. So going to go for a second Aquatail here. Aquatail number 2 gets them low, and the opponent actually lagging there, allowing us to reach another Aquatail. That is huge for us. I'm not really sure what happened there, but we're definitely going to take it. We can come in with the Metang now. We don't need to shield this. The opponent probably going to reach back-to-back rock sides. However, both are going to be resisted. They don't do much damage there, and we can come out with a ton of loaded energy. So Rock Slide number 2 does get us into the yellow health range. However, they come back in with that Shadow Golurk. We can go straight for Psyshock. Psyshock is going to be shielded. We can go for a second Psyshock here. Psyshock number 2 will get them very low here. And now we are going to stay in. We are going to bank a Psyshock and then swap into our Aerodactyl. Honestly, I'm not really sure why we didn't just throw the Charge Brief there, because Aerodactyl, unfortunately, hits for resisted fast move damage up against the Diggersby. So whilst we are resisting everything they can possibly throw, it's not the most comfortable matchup. You can see Scorching Sands puts us into range, but we have to shield Fire Punches. Shadow Golurk definitely left with a Charge Brief loaded. We go for Iron Head, but if the opponent is smart, they should be able to combo play us here. We shield the Fire Punch, and the opponent comes back in. They snipe with the Shadow Golurk, and whilst, yes, we've got a Psyshock loaded, it doesn't really help us out at this point, as they can just Mud Slap, farm us down. We needed that Fury Cut to farm down. We don't get it, and then eventually we do end up losing that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Jumpluff in the lead. They're going to say swap into a Toxapex. That is still a really good matchup for the Metang. We deal big damage with a Psyshock. And we definitely don't need to shield a Brine here. Brine doesn't do much damage, and the opponent actually already had enough there. Metang clearly core breaking their team, and they've just decided to concede the match. But into the next battle, I'm going to see Shadow Typhlosion. We're going to stay initially, swap into Aerodactyl, and we're met with a Florigist. So at this point, we are going to probably shield the first charge move here, as we do want to at least get to a Rock Slide or an Iron Head. Iron Head, of course, super effective. Rock Slide probably threatens the shield anyways, but either way, we do grab that shield there, and the opponent is going to throw straight away. So Chilling Water gets the KO. We can come back in with the Metang. Unfortunately, Fury Cutters are resisted, so this is a bit of an awkward farm down. But, of course, we're going to come out with a ton of energy here. So the opponent actually swaps out, not allowing that farm down. They swap back into Typhlosion. We can grab the final shield there. We can swap into Shadow Gyarados, and we should just barely outpace them to the Aquatail before they reach a second Thunder Punch, so we do throw straight away. Of course, Aquatail, super effective, easily gets the KO there. They come back in with the Florigist, and here we probably could have committed to a Dragon Breath farm down, but instead, not going to allow them to debuff our attack. We go straight for the Aquatail, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Toedscruel. So we go straight for Aquatail once again, dealing decent damage here. The opponent is going to fire off the Charge Brief immediately. Seed Bomb gets us fairly low, but we can just swap back into Metang. We can reach a Psyshock before they farm us down. Psyshock gets the KO there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Shadow Metang once again into another jump off. So the opponent is going to swap out into Clodsire this time around. Once again, still a great matchup for the Metang. However, we're going to swap out into Gyarados. We're going to go straight for an Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl does huge damage there. However, unfortunately, Dragon Breath's not really adding up too much. So we will be forced to throw a second Aerodactyl. I don't think there is a world where we commit to a full Dragon Breath farm down. We are going to shield the first move. They fire off a Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb, of course, means they are very unlikely to be running Stone Edge as well, which means we're going to no shield. However, Sludge Bomb actually puts us into one Poison Sting farm down range. We were one away from the Aerodactyl. If we got damage registration error there, we could have reached it, but unfortunately that was not the case here. But the opponent's going to swap into a Shadow Golurk. Obviously, not the best matchup for us since we are hitting for resisted damage, whilst they are also going to hit for resisted damage there. But we can now grab the final shield. We can come in, go straight for Side Shock. Side Shock gets the KO before they use any of their energy. And at this point, the opponent has just conceded the match there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Lapras in the lead. So this is a great lead matchup. We are double resisting the fast move damage whilst hitting for neutral with our Fury Cutters, and 2 Side Shocks should be enough damage to get the KO. We're also going to outpace them to those charge moves, so going to no-shield the first move here. The opponent goes to Sparkling Aria. We're now going to look to overfarm. Brilliant overfarm, throwing just before they reach a second Sparkling Aria, and Side Shock gets the KO. They're going to come in with a Shadow Dust Noir. We swap into our Aerodactyl, and we're met with a Gligar. But this is actually a fine matchup for us. We're resisting the Fury Cutter damage. We're going to no-shield an Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace still does quite a lot of damage there, but we can fire off the Rock Side. Rock Side gets the KO. They're going to come back in with the Shadow Dust Noir, and at this point, we probably just commit to a full fast move beatdown. The opponent is going to obviously have to stay in this matchup. We're going to try and catch a charge move there. It doesn't work out for us. The opponent actually holding on to the energy, and that might actually allow them to reach 3 charge moves here. It's going to be very close, but of course, we're going to have to shield everything they throw. They fire off 1 Shadow Punch. Unless they're at back-to-back already, we should be fine, and I very much doubt that. So 1 more Dragon Breath gets the full farm down, and we're able to take that game. Into possibly the final battle of this video. Yes, this is definitely the final battle of this video. This was actually the first battle of the submission, but they accidentally didn't have Do Not Disturb turned on, so there's got a few messages here which I'm not going to blur out. It's something about a family dinner or something, but either way, we are going to shield the charge move. We are going to fire off an Aerodactyl into this Drapion. Aerodactyl is going to be shielded by the opponent. At this point, are we going to match shields? We are going to double shield as well, and the opponent is going to swap back into the Abomasnow there. Very nice catch once again. So at this point, I would definitely recommend banking an Aerodactyl before we swap out. Yes, we do exactly that. So very nice play there. We can come back in with the Shadow Metang. The opponent fires off the Energy Ball, which does more damage than a Weather Ball, but doesn't really help them. But we end up throwing on CMP. That is a big mistake here, as we could have just committed to a full farm down, but we go for Side Shock. Side Shock will, of course, get the KO here. The opponent's going to come back in with the Drapion. I mean, they had a charge move loaded anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But Aerodactyl takes us out. We can come back in with our Shadow Aerodactyl, go for a full Rock Throw farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Clodsire. So, of course, once again, whilst we are resisting their fast move damage, they are also resisting the Rock Throws. We go for Iron Head. Iron Head doesn't really do too much damage. And also, this family dinner is looking quite expensive, but we're going to no-shield, of course. They go for a Sludge Bomb. We're staying in here. We do have an Aerodactyl loaded. What we don't want to do, though, is swap out and catch a charge move by accident. So, at this point, we just stay in. We wait for them to throw another move here. The opponent goes for another Sludge Bomb, but we've got the Aerodactyl loaded, so a bit dragged out there, but we can go for Aerodactyl, get the KO, and we're able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.